Athenian Acropolis. This is a reconstruction drawing of the Athenian Acropolis. And what's important to note about an Acropolis is that wherever city that you lived in, whether it was Corinth or Sparta or Athens, you would have had an Acropolis. Acropolis would have been at the highest mountain or highest hill in the city, and that's where they would have built their Acropolis. And an Acropolis is just the religious or ceremonial center. And this one happens to be devoted to Athena because she was their goddess of their town. And so you can see here, as you walk up the walkway here, then you would have gone through the Propylaea. And to the right, you would have seen the temple Nike of Athena. And then here, this is the Parthenon, which was dedicated to Athena. And then over here is the Erechtheum. There's a video that I want you to watch, but that was in your homework, so we're not going to watch it now. All right, so here's the Parthenon and how it looks now. And this was designed, the architects are Iconos and Callicrates. And this was 447 to 438 BCE. It's made of marble. And our theme is sacred spaces and rituals. And the original Parthenon was destroyed by the Persians in 480 BCE, and the Athenians had vowed that they were going to keep it in ruins as a memorial to Athena and as a memorial to the people who had passed when the Persians destroyed it. But Pericles convinced them to rebuild it, to honor Athena and to rebuild it and make it their religious ceremonial location on the Acropolis, and so they did. And here's just another plan view of the entire Acropolis. So just from this view, you can see this is the walkway. This is up through the Propylaea. Here's where Nike, temple of Athena Nike would have been. Here was where the Erechtheum. Here's the Parthenon. And here's the former site of the Acropolis Museum. I think it's now down in this area, located down there. And then this is the theater. Part of that is still in existence as well. On this slide, you can see more of an elevation view, and you can see the Temple Nike comes right to the edge here. And then the Propylaea is up here. You're going through, you're walking through. It was like a Ramada in a way, where you just kind of walked passed right on through. And then here you can see the temple, or the Athena Promachos, Prmachos. And it was said that she was so tall, and her spear and her helmet were made of gold or some sort of metal, that the sailors in a distance from 10 miles away could see the reflection from her helmet and the spear that was in her hand. The Erechtheum here was dedicated to Athena, but to also some other deities as well, some gods and goddesses. Let's go to the next slide. This is showing you the colossal statue of Athena, and she's outfitted in her armor, holding the shield, and she's holding her Athena Nike here, and she is 38 feet tall. She would have been 38 feet tall, which was ridiculously large. You can see the human standing here, how enormously large she would have been. She was made of wood and then covered with ivory and then covered with gold. And so she was probably taken by some warring tribe and then melted down for the gold for whatever. Moving to the next slide. What's important to remember about the Grecians and their building was that harmony and balance were very prominent in their building. So mathematics were important, and everything is measured to, the 16th of an inch. And optical illusion, they have some sort of distortion going on here. So in the center of the building, they've raised the concrete down there. They've raised it higher so that it would drain when it rained, so that it wouldn't swell up in areas. And if you look at the columns, this is easiest to see maybe on this one, where it's a little bit thicker in the middle here, and then it gets thinner as it goes up. And that's called entasis, and the reason for that is because they knew they were correcting our vision. They wanted it to look taller, they wanted it to look thinner, and so they literally made these one piece at a time. They were made out of drums, and then they were strung together like beads on a necklace, and there was a hole down the center of them, and then they would stack them just perfectly. So they'd have to have all this fluting here, they'd have to have all that lined up just perfectly. Here is our floor plan of the Parthenon, and you can see that it's surrounded here by columns. And then along here in the pediments, this is the birth of Athena, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And then this is Athena and Poseidon. That's the pediment of Athena and Poseidon. And then all along here on the outside, there would have been sculpture. And then on the inside, this is the Panathenaic frieze that we will talk about also pretty soon. And here, along here, are columns, and then that's what these are too, these little columns there. And then this is where the colossal statue would have been of Athena. And keep in mind that not just anybody could walk in here. It was mostly the high-powered people that would be able to walk in here, the priests, those kind of people. The average person would not have been able to go in and see the cold statue. And it was for prayers, for special people, and Grecians, where their worship took place was outside, so there would have been an altar outside that they would have done their spiritual ceremonies. This slide shows what the inside would have looked like, and you can see that the Doric columns, the fluting on the Doric columns, and you can see the entasis where it's whiter here in the center and it gets thinner as it goes up, and then you can see that here the Doric column stands right on the stylobate, and there is no base here. And that here are metopes, which are little sculptures. You can see these are metopes, and then between the metopes are the triglyphs. And up here is where the pediment is. That's where the pediment sculpture would be. And then here inside is where the frieze is, which is very unusual to have a frieze on a Doric temple. A Doric temple wouldn't have a frieze, because you can see on this architrave here that has no carving. So here, this is what's called coffers, when you have a squarish, or it could be an octagonal, where there's carving into it. And I guess up here is some coffers as well. So this is sculpture in the round, which means that you could see all the way around it. It was initially carved, obviously, by somebody, and you could see it all the way around. But then when it was put up into the pediment, it would have been secured with metal pins. And, much has been lost over the years, obviously. We can see hardly any heads, and lots of hands and arms are gone. And this again, is the pediment, the Helios, horses, and Dionysus, and this has been part of the birth of Venus. Here shows the reconstruction of the east pediment, and we see Zeus here in the center, and he's sitting on a throne. He could have been standing. We just know that Zeus would have been there, and we know here is Athena, and then here's the Nike, and then Zeus is Athena's father, and then these other gods and goddesses on the sides. And we see here is Dionysus, and he's coming up. Here's his he's part of his chariot, and here's his horses. We think that the reclining male here is Hercules or Dionysus. Oops, this is the sun god, sorry. This is Helio in his horses, and the horse-drawn chariot coming out of the sea. And then on this side, we see the moon goddess, Selene, and she descends her chariot into the sea. So here she is right here, and here's her horses. And this is the part that we have that remains from this pediment sculpture. And you can look at the draping and the fall of the way that they've carved the fabric, and you can see the outline of the body, and it's almost as if they were naked, because you can see all the, here, if you look here, you can see even the stomach and the breasts are you're able to see the curve of the legs and just the way the body is sitting. It's very, very beautifully done, the draping.